All right, good day, gents, and welcome to another episode of Father's Fire. My name is Jody Sedrick, and every week, as you know, we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And, of late, it's been all work. I went on the anniversary trip. Now I'm back, and it's work mode. My partner, Rob Pusey's like cracking the whip, get things done, and so... All right, so I'm super excited because I have a guest today from across the pond. I've had one other guest across the pond. He was from Scotland. This guy is actually from England. So his name is Richard Hutchins. Welcome. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're at.
Yeah. Good evening. It's now 6 p.m. So good morning to you and good evening to us.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's so fun getting to know people both, locally, but, with social media and the industry that you and I are in, we tend to interact with people globally. And, it's so fun to be able to have both business discussions, but also build personal relationships with people, using social media, getting in front of people. And as I was telling you prior to us getting online, one of the things that has really drawn me to you in particular is the relationship that I see with you and your wife. I mean, it is just spot on. You can tell that there's not only love, but there's a relationship, a connection, a friendship. And you guys are business partners too. And so let's bounce there because you and your wife own a company called the Leather Repair Company. So if you guys that are listening that are detailers, you got to get connected with Richard Hutchins because not only does he have the expertise and the talent and the know-how and the products, he's just a great guy to work with, him and his wife. So let's talk about, first of all, being in business with your wife, because I know there's a lot of people that do that and they kind of struggle and they bounce and they succeed. So let's talk about how that's been fun or challenging or a mess.
It's been all of it, to be fair. It's very challenging. Obviously, because you are, obviously she's my wife, she's my best friend, and she's everything, and you're trying to work. When the things are going wrong at work, you're trying to work with that person as well, which makes it very, very, very difficult. So, we've had challenges, but we've always overcome them and, moved on. You've got to, because if you didn't, then you are going to have the business is going to fail, the relationship's going to fail, you're going to lose everything. So it is a very special bond, without a shadow of doubt. I mean, there's, the amount of times everybody, no matter, I think if someone tells you that they're married and they don't ever have arguments, I would say they're probably lying. I mean, everybody has some form of an argument at some stage. We have our, disagreements, we have our arguments. We've had blazing rows in the past, but, we bounce back, I don't know, there's just something there. It's just, there's a very special bond, and it's when you've had that argument, it's like all of a sudden it's, you like cuddle and make up and it's all forgotten about and, you're back to normal. It's weird. I don't know. It's just like you sort of like venting your anger and all of a sudden it's gone and like going outside and shouting and screaming and getting rid of that anger and you're back to normal again. It's weird, but I can't put my finger on it. It's, if somebody that's got a partner, whether you're a male partner or female partner, no matter, I hate the word gay or lesbian. I don't like that. To me, it's like you're a husband or a wife, no matter what you are. I think calling someone a lesbian or a gay is derogatory, in my opinion. If you're a male with a male partner, then you've got to make sure that you've got to be very open with your relationship and make that bond work. And it can work, and it can be exceptionally good and exceptionally exciting for your business as well, if you can make that work. It really can.
Yeah, I think one of the things that couples really struggle with is they have a tendency to hold on to those moments that are not the best for either one of them.
Yep.
Right? And so I think one of the things that makes your relationship really strong and powerful in my relationship is that we recognize that in those moments that it's just a moment, and we can hold on to that, and we can hold it against other people instead of just going, you know what? I was not at my best at that moment. She was not at the best, but at the core, I love her, and I'm going to do what is necessary to make this relationship flourish.
Yeah, exactly. It is, and that's what it boils down to. It is it is that love that you have for your partner, and you've got to, I don't know, it's got to be very deep love. It's I don't know, it's difficult to sort of put my finger on what it is, but I don't know, it's very strange. We're just inseparable. I hate being apart from her. She hates being apart from me. So she says, but she's probably having a whale of a time. She's just been she's just been to Malta after we got back from America. So she was in Malta on her own for a week, and she was thinking, because our daughters sort of, both of them are grown up now. One's 25 and the other's 20. That she was thinking, this is the last time she's going to have a holiday together with our youngest daughter. And while she was there, she was like, do you know what? Nah, I'm going to do this again, because she said, she didn't use her phone. She tried to stay off her mobile. She lost every connection to do with the business and just stayed away and just totally recharged, and had a good time. And so, it's you need that time as well. Sometimes you need that time apart, as well.
Yeah, I think that is a really key point, because my wife this week actually is heading off to Mexico with a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Right? And I think a lot of couples don't give each other space to explore and be themselves and be with their friends. And having that space away creates an opportunity for them to grow and to develop, to reconnect with themselves. But it also provides an opportunity for them to reconnect with you, especially when they come back. It's like, oh, you know what? I really love this relationship. I've loved the getaway, but at the core, I love being together.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk about, being a dad. I mean, you have two beautiful girls, right?
Yep,
both daughters,
absolutely.
right?
Yep. Yeah.
And so you've had not only the joy of being a dad, but being in particular a girl dad, because it is different being a dad of girls than a dad of boys. So let's talk about that adventure of being a dad to two girls.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Obviously, 3 women in the house makes it very, very difficult against one man. Hence why I've now got no hair. I did have a full head of hair when I met my wife. So it's very, I have a very good relationship with my daughters. A lot of fathers don't have that sort of relationship. When they're, the sort of women are sort of, what I call coming of age and sort of periods and things are starting, they talk to me about that. They were very open about their relationship, which I was quite touched with, because I didn't think they would, but they trusted me. They trusted mum, and they spoke to me about it. What do we do? And I'm like, well, Christ, I really don't know. I'm not a girl, but speak to mum, but thanks for telling me, because they were like, who do I trust? Who do I talk to, Dad? And it was very difficult. So obviously to me, not knowing that experience, I didn't know anything about it, So obviously I'm going to Carolyn. It's like, Crystal wants to talk to you. She spoke to me about this, and she's like, wow, that's amazing. She spoke to you about that rather than me. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really know, because we had this, we were very close. My daughters were coming to us with car shows all around the UK. So we were always very, very close, And obviously Crystal, our eldest, was our first daughter. And when she was born, she was in intensive care. She was quite poorly. So there was one point where she went into hospital, and I didn't tell my wife until it was all over, but it was very, very serious. We didn't know whether she was actually going to live or not. When she was about 3 or 4 years old, she got real bad breathing problems. She had like asthma, but didn't have asthma. It was really strange, and she was on so much oxygen levels that was like 5 times the amount that an adult would normally go on. And they said, if it continues like this, we're going to lose her. And I'm like, you cannot tell my wife. She's already literally beside herself of it as it is. And I didn't actually tell Carolyn until about probably 12, 15 years later.
Wow.
And I just had to keep that secret, because I didn't want her to know that she could have potentially have lost her daughter, when she was only like 3 or 4 years old. So it was, I sort of kept that from her and told the nurses and doctors not to tell her. So, but obviously it was difficult because obviously the last thing I wanted was to lose my daughter at 3 years old, and now she's grown up and she's now a biomedical scientist and wants to cure all nasty diseases in the world like cancer and everything else, and she's doing great. And she's been working her butt off through COVID and doing COVID testing and things like that, which wasn't what she was trained to do, but she's jumped in and said, I want to do this, I want to help. She's got all the degrees as a scientist and things, and yeah, totally different to what I thought she was ever going to be.
Wow.
And she loves, she loves animals and things, and she was meant to be getting married in obviously 2020, but COVID, it got cancelled. Then she wanted 21 and no, so it's this November she's getting married, which is quite good. And then she's going on a honeymoon to Thailand and things, and she's going, of all places, in Thailand, she's going to feed the elephants. She's absolutely besotted. She's not bothered about the fact that she's going to Thailand and into a foreign country. She's like, I'm going to feed elephants, Dad. And why are you going to feed elephants for on your honeymoon? Oh, this is great. I'm mucking them out and I'm feeding elephants. And I'm like, you're mucking out elephants and feeding them. But she's absolutely over the moon with it, so which is great. So, but I mean, it is, I mean, being a dad of two girls it's very precious. It's great. It's good.
Well, there's an underlying thing there that I think is all men relate to as dads, right? That you carried the load in your heart and on your shoulders and in your spirit that your daughter wasn't doing real well. And while that can be a really good thing, right? Because we're trying to protect the queen of our heart, but it puts a load on us emotionally, right? And I think a lot of men don't know when to do that and when not to do that.
Yeah.
Because certainly there's a place where you go, hey, honey, I need to talk to you. We have a serious challenge here, or we had a serious challenge. But I think some men carry everything on their back and in their heart that they don't provide an opportunity for them to really connect with their wife and walk through that challenge together.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with that internal load on your heart going, oh man, my she cannot be with us?
Yeah, it was very difficult. I don't know. I just had to be strong, and deal with it all, and deal with everything. And it's the same. It's like when they moved out, when Crystal moved out, it wasn't so bad because we still had the youngest daughter living, with us. And it was like with the youngest one, Eloise, it happened so quick, and she sort of left school. She didn't want to go to university. She was a bit like me, she left school, didn't want to go to university. And we didn't really know what she was going to do. We always thought, she's like, I always want to have a yacht and I want a Mercedes, a white convertible Mercedes with a red interior. And my argument always was, Daddy ain't buying it. If you want it, get out there and earn it. If you want it, go out and earn it. It's very, very simple. You've got to go and earn it because nobody's going to give you it. You've got to go and earn it. Or find yourself some very wealthy man and go and earn it. It's very, very simple. There's got to be a way around doing it. But because I ain't going to buy it. If I was taught to make my own money. Stand by myself, and that's what you got to do, and that's what we've done with our girls. Is brought them up to understand the value of money and respect others. But it was, I don't know, it was very, very difficult. I don't know. It's I guess it's just the way I was brought up, the way I handled it. It's just sort of being around. I don't know, but being brought up in the sort of I was obviously born in '68, so I went through a lot of period where my family didn't have TVs and stuff like that. And when we did get our TV, it was a black and white one and things, and that was we used to listen to radio. So I was sort of brought up around a lot of things that were we had water shortages. We were on standpipes where we couldn't get water, we couldn't get baths and stuff. Or get a shower. So I was brought up on a very, I don't know, some people could call me very tough-hearted. But it's difficult to describe how I coped, I don't know. It's very, very...
Yeah.
I just managed, I think it's just through getting failures myself that made me quite sort of resilient to that sort of side of it, and seeing relations die when I was quite young, and, like 6 and 7 and 8 years old, sort of dealing with that sort of death side of it quite a young age, because I was quite close to my grandparents, and I was, obviously lost them when I was quite young. So it made me quite resilient to sort of how to cope, with my heart so far as that was concerned, with my children.
Yeah, I love that you said if you want a white Mercedes, a red interior, and a yacht, you got to go earn it.
Yep. Oh, you got
Because Judy and I have had the same mentality. I made all of my kids buy their first car.
Yep.
You know, they wanted a trampoline as a kid. I mean, really little kids. And I'm like, all right, well, you know what? I'll do this for you. I'll pay for half the trampoline, but you got to earn half the money first.
Yep.
And I've told them all, if you want to go to college or you want to go to acting school or whatever, you know, I'll be your biggest fan and I'll help you when you get in a pinch. And you always have a place to rest your head and be safe and don't have to worry about food. But you're going to go earn it, right? You're going to pay the price to get that education. Because I think there's real value in teaching your kids that, man, if you want something, go pay the price to get it.
Exactly. Yep. Oh, yeah, they've got to. That's exactly what they've got to do. And it's like my youngest daughter said, you know, what is this garbage they're teaching me at school? Because I don't need to know what's gone on 100 years ago, Dad. I want to know what's going on today. You know, that was like, that's why I left school, you know, because I walked out of school at 14, no education, no exams, no qualifications. And my headmaster turned around to me and he said, Hutchins, you are going to be a dropout. You're going to be in trouble with the police before you're even 16 years old. He said, you're going to be in prison for the rest of your life. No problem. We'll deal with that when we cross that bridge. If that happens, we'll deal with it. I went back to him when I was 18 years old. I flew in from Boston, jumped into my Mercedes 500 SEL and drove to school for a reunion. And I'd managed to arrange all the press to come round because we knew the press quite well. Got all the press there. And when I sort of put my thumbs up, I stood there and shook my headmaster's hand because I was going to dinner that night in London at Harrods and things with some very high-flying guests that were coming in to look at buying Harrods with Mohammed Al Fayed and things. And I stood there, shook his hand, and we got on the front page of all the newspaper. School dropout flies in from Boston and meets headmaster again. Happy days. So I just, I literally, you know, my mum was in tears because she was like, the headmaster hated all of us at school. And she was like, that's the best present anybody could ever have given me for my whole life, because you have just humiliated that man like he humiliated you and your brothers all their life. He said, you've literally just done it in a single swoop. But not only have you done it, you put it in the newspapers, you got it on the front page of everything. School dropout appears. She said, and the best thing of all was all the kids stood next to him, which all left school with like A levels and O levels in England, which is like the highest grade you can get, which is like just up a degree. None of them had jobs. They couldn't get jobs. But this school dropout that left at 14 with no education.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. And it's an important, and it's an important lesson. I was having this very discussion earlier in the week. You know, in the States here, we have such a strong emphasis on getting a college education. That we've neglected and diminished and even put our thumbs down on the trades.
Yep.
And some people aren't meant to go to college.
No.
And it's okay, right?
Yep.
So instead of pushing them in a direction that they don't want to go. In fact, I remember very clearly my son was, going to college here. He was 3 years into a 4-year degree. And he came to me and he said, Dad, I want to go to Europe. And I'm like, okay. He goes, no. He goes, I want to leave school early and go to Europe, at least for 8 to 12 weeks. And I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm going, you only have 1 year left. I mean, you're almost to the finish line.
Yep.
But rather than voice what was in my head, I'm like, you know what? Go take the adventure. Because you don't know what doors you're going to open, what experiences you're going to have by not taking this venture that's obviously being pulled into your heart.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, and I told him, I go, you can always come back and finish a year. I mean, what, big deal.
Exactly.
Right. So he went off and his plan was to go for 8 weeks. He ended up like 16 weeks taking the train and busking and having all these amazing adventures. But he ended up meeting someone that ran a clothing company that traveled the music festival circuit all through the United States, built the relationship with her, and ended up becoming her buyer that allowed him to go to Thailand and Vietnam and buy. He would have never had that experience or exposure because he's stuck in school.
Yep, and that's exactly what I had with going to America with the guy that it was a family friend of ours, and they owned like 9/10 of Knightsbridge in London, which was like billions of dollars worth of property. And the son of the father that I knew, he had a collection of 150 classic cars, and obviously most of them were American cars, a lot were English. And I was given the opportunity when I was 14 to go to America. Obviously, I couldn't travel because I had to get permission from my parents. My dad was like, look, son, I know you don't. My dad was a landscape gardener. He's like, I know you don't like flowers and plants. If you like cars, go. And I'm like, Mum won't let me go. And he's like, I'll speak to Mum. And she was like, he's not going. I'm not losing my son at 14. I'm like, no, Mum, I'm going. And in the end, I just packed all my cases. I came downstairs and I said, you're signing this now, this letter, or I'm going to leave anyway. I said, I'm sorry, but I want to go out and I want to get real life adventure. I said, I've quit school. I've walked out today. And in the end, she just signed the letter in a ball of tears and just said, there you go. And I signed it, and I got this opportunity to go to America and met some of the most amazing people that you could possibly ever meet. Like all the guys, like Richie Klein, from the Imperial Palace Museum and things like that. Ralph Engelhart, I was just so many people. John Frankenheimer, a French Connection producer, 52 Pickup. So many guys I met. Tom Monaghan, Domino's Pizza. I mean, I'm there with him in Hershey, walking around Hershey in various shows. And I've got all the guys from Cruise Auctions. I mean, and that just gave me so much. And I mean, I'm in the middle. I mean, and this is where I sort of got my balls, so to speak. I'm in the middle of an auction in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at Jimmy Lake's auction. And Jimmy we knew quite well. And Dean Cruiser stood up on the podium, and there's all these cars coming up. And every time we walked in, he was called Richard and I was called Richard. And being typical American, he liked to call us Dick. So, of course, Richard was quite big and I'm quite small. You can imagine what's coming, can't you? So Dean would shout out over the podium, over the microphone, the minute he saw us in front of like 30-odd thousand people, here's Big Dick, Little Dick from London, England, and I'm sure in more ways than one. Hey, Little Dick, come up on the podium, say hi. And there's this 14-year-old kid. Oh, my God. Everybody's staring at me, walking up to the podium to stand on the podium. Hey, Little Dick, how you doing? And I'm like, yeah, I'm cool, thanks. How are you? So it sort of gave me a lot of life experiences. And then Dean's like, hey, do you want to drive the cars on the podium? I don't even have a driving license. I've never driven before. And that's where I sort of got my passion to get into the cars. And that's where I started to learn the leather side of things. Obviously, it was Maguire's going around all the auctions then, sort of guys sort of showing me how to buff cars and things with rotaries and stuff. And or in those days, an angle grinder with a buffer head on the head, because it was quite. So that's where I got all my experiences, and that is so valuable to me. And I couldn't have learned that at school. These guys teaching me, Tom Monaghan talking to me about how he's running his business and his pizza empire, and Jerry J. Moore, and from Texas, how he's running his massive property empire and building supermarkets and buying. Duesenberg after Duesenberg, $1 million at a time. And I'm up in Jerry's penthouse flat in Vegas when, in Reno, when all the auction was on and it was just phenomenal meeting these guys. And the experience that I got, I couldn't have had by staying in education at school. I got real life experience, how to run businesses from these guys that are billionaires, and that was such an amazing gift, and I cannot thank them enough ever. I mean, it's those guys that I owe my life to, because they made me who I am today. They made me who I am to be with my wife and everything, because they taught me. These guys most of them were orphans, and it's just it's amazing how they've transformed their life, and that just taught me so much.
When you think about the courage that had to be in your mom's heart.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
To go against every fear and concern in her heart to sign that paper to give her boy the freedom to go pursue that dream. We as parents, I think a lot of times, especially in the States, we get in this mindset that our kids need to take a certain path.
Yep.
Instead of allowing them the freedom to pursue and discover who they are. and in the process discover an amazing world, an amazing opportunity for a career or meeting people. Because what she did was she gave you the freedom to put yourselves in circles of success.
Yep, and that's exactly what I did, and that's exactly what they did for me. That's exactly what happened, and that's why, like with my girls, when they've said, like with Eloise, she was like, "Dad, I don't want to go to to college and get a degree. Are you going to be mad at me?" And I'm like, "Do whatever you want to do. Do whatever you want to do. We're going to be with you no matter what. We're going to be here always. There's always there's always a roof over your head here, like you said with your kids. There's always a pillow here to lie on. There's always a roof over your head. Just do what you want to do. We'll be there to help you. We'll be there to guide you. If it goes wrong, we'll help you pick the pieces up. We're not going to bail you out, but we'll help you get the pieces picked up because you've got to learn. But just do what you want to do." And that's exactly what she's done. She's now, I don't know how she's managed to do it. She came out of school, she'd done, she didn't do brilliantly. She did okay. And she's now managed to get herself a job in a school, working in a school in like finance. And she hated maths, and now she's in finance doing all like that sort of side of things. And it's amazing. And she's done absolutely brilliant, and she's loving it, and it's great. How she's done it, I don't know. And again, it's just because we've brought them up almost with that business ethic. I had my girls when Crystal must have been, the eldest, which she must have been, I don't know, maybe 11 years old, 12 years old at the most. And Eloise is like 5 years younger. We had them polishing cars out in the middle of showgrounds in England in the middle of summer. We used to import mother's polish. So we would go and they would be there. These two little wee girls would be polishing cars in the middle of a showground. And we had one guy come up to us and he's like, "How good is this mother's polish?" I'm like, "Mother's is the best in the world." I said, "I wouldn't use it myself if it wasn't the best." And he's like, "How good is it?" I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, it's this good. My two girls stood here. They're going to come and polish your car for you. And they're going to show you how good this product is." And he's like, "I've just had a £30,000, talking like $50,000 paint job restoration done on this car." He said, "What's going to happen if they ruin it?" I said, "They won't ruin that car. They know exactly what they're doing." And Crystal Eloise would have been sort of like 6 years old. And he's like, "She's a baby." I'm like, "She's good. Trust me, she's good." I just said, "Here you go, Eloise. You take the cloth to buff off. Crystal, you put the polish on. That's the pad. Don't drop it. If you drop it, come back and get another one. You know the score." She's like, "Yep, we know, Dad. Don't worry." And I'm like, "Don't forget, it's baking hot sunshine." I said, "Eloise, you know what you got to do when she's polishing?" She's like, "Yeah, I'll hold the rag up, Dad. Don't worry, to stop the sun from where I put where Crystal puts the polish on. Go do it." They came back about 20 minutes later with this guy, and he's like, "How many bottles of this stuff do you have?" I said, "Oh, I've probably got 100 here." He said, "Oh, I don't need that many." He said, "But I tell you what, them two girls are absolutely awesome." He said, "I want at least 10 bottles right now."
That's brilliant. Brilliant.
But we gave them life experience skills, and that they were stood there at 6 years old selling polish and leather care products to people at 6 and 11 and 12 years old, selling bottles of products to people at a show. And they weren't frightened to talk to people. They were like, "I'm shy." I'm like, "No, you talk to them. You've got to, anything you want in life, you've got to have that guts to stand up and say, I want it, and talk to people." And that's what we've taught them. And that's exactly what they do. And they're not frightened to tell me either when I'm wrong.
and that's brilliant, right? They've been raised to have a voice. They've been raised to have confidence in themselves to go, "You know what? I can move in the world in any circles because my dad and mom put me in a place where I learned how to do that."
Yep, exactly.
So looking back, in final wrap up, because you and I can keep going. I mean, it's so much fun. I want to be respectful of your time. So looking back, what have you discovered about yourself as being a dad, and what do you think is critical for other dads to do in their family?
I think what have I discovered about myself as being a dad? It certainly made me a very different person. It certainly put a lot of responsibilities on you having kids, that's for sure. Whereas before I'm still quite blasé about things. It sort of worries Carolyn sometimes when she's like, we can't take this deal on. And I'm like, no, we'll take the deal on. Then we're going to fathom out how we're going to work it. That's the sort of way I've been brought up. I'll always take the deal and then fathom out how I'm going to make it work. But when the kids sort of came along, it was almost sort of like backpedaling, because it's like I've got not just one person to care for now, my wife. I've obviously got three. You know, I've got two babies to care for, and it's still like I call them my little girls or I call them my babies, even though she's 25 and she's like, Dad, I'm not a baby anymore. And I'm like, no, but you always will be my baby. Even when you're 50, you're going to be my baby. You know, if I'm still alive, you're still going to be my baby, you know, and then that's the way it's going to be. I don't know. It's a special bond, you know, it sort of especially when Carolyn was pregnant, it's amazing how defensive you come towards people and how protective you become towards her when other people are around, where people are maybe not quite realizing and they're sort of like barging by, and you become very, very, very protective over your partner, especially when she's carrying your baby, you know. And then when they're born, I don't know, it's like I've got pictures almost a bit like Lion King stood on the mountain, you know, with Mustafa looking out over the plane. I've got pictures of me like stood there like this with my girls, you know. It's really weird. You know, like the sort of king with his, you know, his new sort of queens arriving. You know, it's really weird. But I mean, it's certainly taught me to be a very different person and have a lot more sort of respect for life, for sure, definitely. And I think giving a father advice, I think, is talk to your children, talk to your kids, get to know them. You know, I've made a lot of mistakes, obviously, you know, growing up with my kids and not being there when I should have been, you know, which I regret, and I can't do anything about it. You know, they're grown up now and I can't go back in time. You know, you just got to try to make the best of what you've got now, you know, and that's how it goes. You know, we all sort of screw up somewhere. And, you know, to me, it was just work. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, she's leaving home. When am I going to see her at school, you know, with school days and stuff? And all of a sudden it's gone and it's like, I can't ever do that. I would say, make sure, especially in England, we have what they call sports days. So during certain terms of our year, when it's like the end of the term, we'll have a sports day where the kids do all sorts of sports activities at school. And I didn't go to those always, and I wish I had done. And I didn't go because I never had that privilege of my parents coming to me, because again, they were working class people, and they never came to my sports days. So because for them it was different, because it was quite miles from school from where I was, from home. Whereas here we can walk to school. But I would say if you've got that opportunity, be with your kids as much as you possibly can, because once they're grown up, you will, without a doubt, regret it if you don't do it. Without a doubt, is speak to your kids, be with your kids, even if it's like I always make a point at Christmas time. We sort of got out of the habit at the moment with Crystal growing up, but every time at Christmas, I'd go out with my two girls just before Christmas Day, and we'd go shopping with my girls. They'd all have £100 each, and we'd buy them presents, and they'd buy mum presents, and I'd buy mum presents as well. And I'd go out and I'd have a meal with them, and I'd sit down with just my two girls, you know, and then Carolyn would do the same with the girls, you know, and we did that as they were growing up, and we did that every single year, you know, unless there was years we couldn't afford it, and then they would understand, you know, it's like, we can't do it this year, can we, Dad? Because I know money's tight. You know, and this is like a 12-year-old girl telling me, you know, and I'm like, no, we can't. And she's like, it's okay, don't worry, we did it last year, it's cool, we'll do it again next year. You know, and that, you know, wow, you know, gets to your heart. You know, when you got kids at like 12 years old telling you that they know you haven't got the money to do it. Because I mean, you know, we've had our ups and downs like we do with everything. You know, and now we're sort of like, you know, spearheading like, you know, multi-million-dollar companies, and things are different, but we still have tough times now. You know, but I would say talk to your kids, be with them a lot more than what I was, without a shadow of a doubt, because they grow up so quick.
I love that. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to visit with me. I love your energy. I love your story. I love your passion and love for your kids and your wife. And you know, there's guys, in fact, I'm going to go back and listen to this again, because I think there's so many nuggets in there. And I think a lot of times we don't put ourselves and our children in a place to take advantage of opportunities, of experiences. And that's really what life's about, is like, how do we grow? How do we become? And you've obviously created an environment where your kids can thrive and discover who they are. So, guys, I want to go ahead.
Full-time jobs, and they both own their own businesses. So we've taught them something, right?
Yes, you have. So, guys, tapping in, thank you so much for joining me every week. Please go out to Facebook, connect with Richard Hutchins. That's Hutchins. He owns the leather repair company with his wife. They are a phenomenal company. I mean, if you're in the detailing world, you got to get connected with them. And if you just want to connect on a personal level, these guys are above board. I mean, straight up. So thank you again. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. And guys, tuning in, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And we will check you same time, same bad channel, just next week. See ya.
Thank you, guys.